Yes, folks, hello, welcome once again to Mod Extra Games and Collectibles. It's time for another action figure review here on the channel. And as you can see on the screen right now, today's installment, we're going to take a closer look at the Marvel Legends series X-Men 97 Wave 2 X-Cutioner figure. So stick around, I'll give you all the ins and outs, ups and downs on this particular figure here. If you've been thinking about picking one up for yourself, then it's my hope that my review thoughts today will help you make your mind up. So I'm going to show you the unboxing experience and what it's like to open the figure for the very first time. I'm going to talk you through the aesthetic and the visual experience of getting hands-on with the X-Cutioner. And I'm going to talk you through the articulation and all the included accessories and added value. So let's not dilly-dally around, let's get into it, and let's go back in time now to visit past Chris as he opens it up for the very first time. All right, let's have a quick look at the packaging then on the X-Cutioner. So it's the X-Men 97 Wave, got some characters in the corner there, some animated style artwork on the card back up here. The X-Cutioner. I don't know, whatever. Then the figure in the little blister bubble with all the goodies being shown off down the side there. That's pretty much it with the card back figure. Let's have a look at the back. Digital render of the fig. All the other characters in this particular wave. Gotta say, folks, I didn't go for the Goblin Queen, but now I'm filled with regret. I might be picking her up. Let's see if she goes down in price a little bit. Legal bollocks and malarkey across the bottom, and that's it. Let's get it open. Classic Mod Extra, unceremonious, just tearing right from the back. Not giving a shit. There we go. I'm like the honey badger, folks. There we are. Oh, paperwork. Take him out from there. Oh, that's in a little separate piece. Okay, there we go. So we got crazy ass Mars Attack style ray gun thing. Oh, look at that. That's cool. Then we got the hand cannon thingamadoo-dad. Then one piece of stick. Two pieces of stick. And then the figure himself. I noticed the cape was fed through the back there. Hate it when they do that. There we go. And there we are. And there we go, ladies and gents. We have the X-Cutioner out of the blister pack, ready to be played with. So I'm going to go away and do just that. Get nice and hands-on, do some little dios with some more X-Men characters. Just generally recreate the appearance from, I don't know, was it episode 2 that he appeared in? Or right at the back end of episode 1? But nonetheless, I'm going to do some playtime. I'm going to dig out some old comic book issues and see how he compares to the comic book version of the character as well. And I'll come back and share some review thoughts in a couple of days, so stick around and, get those review thoughts. All right, see you in a bit. Okay then, folks, let's move into the review section of the video now, and we're going to begin by talking about the character's aesthetic. Let's discuss my visual experience with the X-Cutioner figure. And to begin with, I'm going to get started with a full body look of the fig. It's clearly very animated in style. You can tell by some of the design choices with regards to the way things like how his coat and his little capey thing is draped, and the colour choices and the boldness of some of the colours, and the kind of large unsculpted areas that are sort of blocky in that kind of animated style kind of way, means that it just stands out very much so as an animated inspired figure, which is fine because it's from the X-Men 97 wave, which is a wave based on the recent episode of the cartoon that featured the X-Cutioner. But if you are one who's looking for an X-Cutioner to fit into a display more generically that will work comic book and animated, then this guy probably isn't it. He definitely just sings animated. There's a kind of softer, more drawn, like cell style to the design, and less sort of angular comic booky style stuff. Does that make a sort of sense? I think I've articulated that well. So when next to mainline figures that are more comic book inspired and have been sculpted to be so, he does definitely stand out as a bit more cartoony by comparison. Now, I'm not precious about that. I don't care. I mix animated and comic book and live action stuff just to do whatever I want to do. But I know that some folks prefer to have quite a traditional looking display, and this guy is not a replacement for an X-Cutioner if you're a 90s kind of Scott Lobdell, Jim Lee era guy. It's just not going to work. Bringing him a bit nearer to the camera so that we can do a closer inspection of the finer details. You can see it's not, it's not a bad figure by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to the sculpting. You can see some creases and folds and some details added in there to give it some texture and some depth. The paint applications are well applied. If we look at his kind of hooded helmet-y thing, you can see nice, neat paint applications on this silver faceplate. We've got the little embellishments across the top there. The eyes are painted white, all lovely. Good colour contrast in the jacket to the main robe underneath. Although one thing I will say, colour-wise, you can obviously see that this is a green coat, but in the cartoon, in his appearance in the recent episode on X-Men 97, it was more of a browny green and lighter in colour. So it's a little bit darker. And in some lighting, it just looks black, but that's fine. But good colour contrast, your nice flash of red there. Sculpted details in the armoured arms. You see there, and all these extra little bits of trimmings, like his, like little bullet capsule things on this arm strap here, and details in the glove and the gauntlet section. A little bit of paint chipping here, but I think I've done that. I don't think it came out of the box like that. The belt here, the sculpting of the belt is definitely an area that sort of heightens, amplifies that animated style look. The way the pouches are sort of very curved and rounded, and I don't know how to describe it. They're like just a bit sort of sticky outy bulbous in an animated type way. And then the font choice on the FOH belt buckle, the Friends of Humanity belt buckle, the organisation that X-Cutioner belongs to, has got a kind of cartoony vibe about it too. But again, the paint applications are well applied. Always very happy when we've got a painted belt buckle and we've got things like little silver trimmings to bring it to life and give it some depth. So, that is what it is. Moving down to the bottom half of the figure into the legs, you can see once again the boots are really well sculpted. Lots of different kind of colour contrast applied there with his shiny silver knee pads, his brown boots, and with all these extra kind of sculpted bits here. Always very pleased when a boot is sculpted on rather than painted on. And then he's got his steel toe caps at the bottom there as well, all in this kind of metallic colour, but again, it's not particularly shiny and metallic looking necessarily. It's got that a little touch of that sort of animated style dullness to it, which is great if you're looking for a comic book style character, but will look a bit flat next to some of your other characters in your collection. This little shoulder cape's all right. It's nice enough. There's a little embellishment here. Obviously, the splash of red there adds to the overall colour experience of the character, but it's well sculpted. You've got these kind of draped sort of contours in there. It's that sort of rubbery plastic. It is not particularly manipulable, and it does have an impact on the articulation of the figure, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it's overall, it's okay, and I like that splash of red. It just adds a little bit of something to the palette of the character, although obviously that's not Marvel Legends, that's driven by the character design that they used for X-Cutioner for the cartoon. Although the red kind of shoulder cape piece is a key part of the visual identity of the character from the original comic book designs back in the 90s. And you know what? Aesthetically, it stands out as something a little bit different. He's got a tiny bit of a different flavour about him. Again, to reiterate, that's less about Marvel Legends and more about the character design from the inspiring source material. But he does sort of have a little bit of a shelf presence that makes him stand out in amongst some of the other stuff. I was trying him out with, I had a Toad out and a Blob out and stuff, and he does catch the eye as something with a little bit more flavour and a more kind of curious presentation to him, which I kind of appreciated, although, like I say, he did definitely stand out as being a bit more animated looking. So I'm enjoying that, but it's the way that Marvel Legends have realised that in three-dimensional plastic form, isn't it? That's the key here. They can't take the credit for the interest I'm taking in the overall design, but they can take credit for bringing it to life in 3D plastic. So I think as far as visual experience goes, yeah, I've kind of enjoyed it, actually. I think he's nice, he's a little bit different, it's really well sculpted, but it sells itself with regards to the source material very, very well. I'm going to give it a thumbs up with the small print that if you're looking for one to slip into a comic book line, this ain't going to be your guy. All right, okay, let's go take a look at the articulation of the figure now then. All right, so folks, for fear of messing up my average view duration, I'm putting you all in a position where you're just going to fast forward to the next bit. I'm going to call it out up top. The articulation is possibly where this figure falls down. In fact, falls down quite a bit because the articulation is all there in terms of standard Marvel Legends stuff, but it's enormously restricted by the overall character design. You know, the coat, the cloak, the cape, all this stuff, the headgear is restricting movement to an extent where you become very limited in terms of what you're able to do with the character. So there you go. There's the TLDR for those folks. I see you. I know you. I know you're out there. The analytics shows me. But for those who want to see it in more detail, I'll get cracking on. We'll start at the head. I can't speak to the engineering of the articulation in this at all, but basically there's nothing beyond a little bit of down. That's as high up as you can get it, and you can sort of swivel it a little bit left and a little bit right. I think it has got the capacity to go, a bit further. There you go. But that's it. That's all you've got. So not a great deal of expression that can be communicated through the articulation in the head other than an intimidating glare. Moving down into the shoulders, I can't tell. I think there might be a butterfly joint in there, just looking at that sort of forward and back motion. But as you can see, you don't get a great deal from it. Then it's the hinge and swivel. So you could, in theory, go all the way around if you didn't have all this obstructive material here. And you can tee it out like so. We've also got a swivel at the top of the bicep and tricep that's a bit difficult to access, again, because of all the character design trimmings, like shoulder pads and draped capes. There's a pinless double elbow that'll get you up to there. And then it's the standard pegged-in hands that can swivel all the way around, and then both hands, right and left, have got up and down hinges in them. Into the waist, or main torso area, but the waist is the only bit of articulation that we've got in the main torso area. There's no ab crunch, although you can get a little bit of forward there and a little bit of back with this waist joint. And then you've got quite a bit of swivel available in there. One nice touch they've done with the articulation is that they've sculpted this belt strap over the shoulder here onto the body so that rather than attaching it to the waist belt, so if you are spinning them around like that, it moves proportionally. But mine's quite springy, and as you probably noticed, if you push too far, you get these little gaps there. So it's all right, but his forwards about there-ish, and his back is about there. Well, about there without revealing a gap. One thing that the waist swivel does do, which is something I whinge about with Marvel Legends all the time, is that when you start moving things around, the shape of his outfit then goes a bit skewiff, a bit funny. But that's it. That's the limit of what you got there. Then moving down into the waist, the hip and groin area, there is a joint to bring it forward there, you can see, but it's obviously heavily obstructed by the jacket and by this draped front dick cloak piece here. So there's not very far up you can get on that, and you certainly can't go particularly far out sideways. There is a thigh swivel at the top, which gives you a little bit of motion up there. But if you're looking to use that to make your positioning of the X-Cutioner a little bit more ambitious, you're gonna struggle. Access to it's quite hard. There is also a pinless double knee, but once again, that ain't going to do you a lot of good outside of a little bit of bending like so. Some stepping forward, breaking through the gap in the coat and the robe. No boot swivel, at least not that I can identify. And then the hinge and rocker on the ankle. So I am going to give the articulation a thumbs down. It's a shame because it's not really Marvel Legends' fault. It's the character design that's causing the articulation problems. The coat, the jacket, the shoulder pads, all the stuff. Just the character design has limited the options. And, in the world of reuse and just kind of sticking to the same tooling, I don't think it's a character that's going to fly off the shelves quite popular enough to warrant some more ambitious engineering to try and give us a wider range of articulation with the figure, So I get it. It's a shame, but I get it. But what that does mean is that I found him a little boring. I just haven't been able to really do anything super exciting. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll be like, has he ever even taken any pictures of this figure? No, because that's about it. Just sort of standing, just standing, being intimidating, scaring mutants, glaring at them. He can glare at them down, or he can glare at them eyeball to eyeball, depending on their height. The arm range is not great. When I come to the accessories in a minute, you'll see you can't really do much with the gun and that in his hands. You can't do much here. You know, it's just made him a little bit bland and boring, which is a shame because he's quite visually interesting, but articulation-wise, you just can't really do anything ambitious to bring that to life. So there you go. All right, let's now look at his accessories, shall we? Seeing as I've just mentioned them. And I'm going to start with this one here, the Sentinel hand cannon. Or Sentinel Killer, something. I can't remember what they called it. It just looks like a big... Well, you can see it. I can see it. I don't need to say it out loud. But there it is. It's fine. It's got this big open space at this side for putting the Executioner's hand in. And then it's got this purple design with a little shooty bit at the end there. And these kind of lighter purple... What colour is that? Like a pinky purple? I'm not good with colours, and a yellow, and it's got some sculpted details in it to bring it to life, which is all fine. Slides on the Executioner's hand like so, but as you can see, it's a very loose fit, so the minute you start doing stuff with it, you find it just falls off. It's not, the implementation on that's not very good. Also, colour scheme wise and aesthetically, it clashes with the figure's design quite a bit. I know it's accurate to the way it was in the cartoon and the Sentinel tech that the Friends of Humanity were using, but it just clashes. Then we got his super wacky ray gun thing. I quite like this. I know a few folks, I saw some comments out on the socials that weren't so happy about this, but I like this sort of 50s Mars Attack style aesthetic of this mad fucking thing. It's got some nice sculpting on it, the different colours in there with the kind of goldy colour at the front, the brown woody pieces, the metal pieces, the sculpted details tonight. It's got two channels here, which we'll talk about in a minute, but on the other side you can see there's a peg. And if I turn the Execution around, you can see there's a little peg hole here, although it is obscured by where the strap is sculpted, so you can slot the gun in like so for carrying. I mentioned before, I mean, the gun, as much as I like the sort of 50s pulpy sci-fi look of the ray gun, your options are very limited. The fit in the hand grip is not great at all. I don't know if you can see that. It's easy enough to put in, but it's a bit loose, and you can't get the hands around it enough to get a nice tight grip. And then because of the obstructed articulation, it's very difficult to position him in a shooting pose. You have to sort of curl that round there. And then you can't really get this arm far enough forward to, I don't know. It's just it's very tenuous and it's not great. And your options are limited. I've mostly had him sort of just standing all threateningly with it like that, which is a shame. Then we've got his two sticky things. One's a pointy spear and one's like a BT smacky BT club thing. These are fine, I suppose. They look a bit bland and plain. Like once you get beyond the sculpting at the top here, it's just a very plain, sort of shiny, silvery piece of plastic there. A single sculpt. They're okay. I mean, I have had them in his hands for some of the posing that I've done with him. And then these have got these little pegs here. I mentioned about the peg holes in the ray gun. And I believe this is the intent, that the pegs in the ray gun allow you to mount the two pokey stick things into those two holes and then mount the gun into his back there so he can carry all his gear over his shoulder. One nice touch is that they've made the height of the pegs a little different here so that you can enter the items into his back and then sort of spread them out to make it a little bit more sort of aesthetically pleasing from the front. Like so, which I think is a nice touch, and I've actually seen him illustrated as such on some of the marketing materials. So, yeah, nice little touch to give it a bit more depth. So the accessory selection's all right. I mean, to get 4 pieces of accessory in with your Marvel Legends is a marvel in its own right, but they're not great. They're let down by the articulation and some of the shortcutting. These rods are just really bland and boring. And I quite like the ray gun, but then the ray gun doesn't fit his hand properly. So it's just filled with little annoyances and little grievances that affect that accessory experience. However, they do obviously contribute to the storytelling that you want to do with the figure, particularly the kind of Sentinel tech blaster thing, because that's, you know, if you want to recreate elements of the episode that the X-Cutioner appeared in, then you can do so. So, you know, they're thought out in that sense. Now, I'm just going in the middle. It's a half. It's not a thumbs up. It's not a thumbs down. It's just good enough. All right. You know, and I can't really see me using these bits at the back a great deal. Can't see me using that a great deal. In fact, as far as articulation accessory goes, he's basically going to stand on the shelf like that and nothing more. Okay, folks, well, here's X-Cutioner going around on the turntable so you can take the full 360 look, and there's not a lot left to say, really, in summary. I've enjoyed the visual experience. I think he's a very visually interesting character, but the articulation and the accessory selection let it down, and I don't think it's been quite as well implemented as it could be. That said, I have made some nice little displays with some of my other animated stuff, and he fits in well enough. It's not a total loss, but I'm not sure I can recommend this one particularly. It's just not, I just found him a bit boring. It's just not sung to me. Now, one final note on that is that X-Cutioner has arrived in the centre of a huge raft of pre-orders that have landed here at Mod Extra Games and Collectibles Towers. I've had some classifieds, I've had some Legends, I've had some DC Multiverse. It's just been a big batch of stuff all arrived roughly within the same couple of week window. So I will add one extra little bit on the end, a bit of small print here on the end, to pose the question or the point of reflection. Am I finding it a bit more boring? And am I less enamoured with the figure? And am I reviewing it more unfavourably because I've been having a better time with the other stuff that's arrived? Now, that might be a point in its own right, I suppose, but I'm just putting it out there that if it had come in the middle of nowhere on its own, or just with a couple of other animated figures, would I have had more fun? Who knows? But in the interest of fairness, I thought I'd point that out. All right, well, there we go. That concludes my review. If you've enjoyed the review, you found it useful, then give us a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, then please hit the subscribe button and come and join the Mod Extra Games and Collectibles viewing community. And have a great day, he says. Ugh, I will get the timing of this little presentation on the turntable at the end right one day. Ay, ay, ay. Bye-bye.